What's up, squad? This is Brandon from the Bantu Sun. Thank you so much for joining me today. So, there's so much going on in the world. I figure we do a round robin, catch up on a lot of news items over the weekend that came out and some possible implications that they might have. So, as you know, it's this MAGA first foreign policy. And I think a lot of people, especially in America, I think they're strong in the Western Hemisphere, and I think they're giving up a lot. And the other part of the world, particularly Eurasia, which really matters, they're breaking something which has been the system of alliance, the what you could say is the Bretton Woods Compromise, or basically the system of alliances that have reigned over the world, Western led since the end of World War II, and they're really breaking some alliances, and you'll see that play out. But primarily, there were just more operations in Ecuador. So the U.S. down in Ecuador, they're fighting off terrorists. The Trump administration is really big on knocking out what they would consider narco traffickers or drug traffickers. That's what they're saying. They're saying this is because they're good people, right? The Trump administration, they're good people. They're just trying to stop drug dealers. But what this really is illegal operations or black markets are competitions to the state, right? So as they are destroying these individuals, they're not really destroying the black market. If that was the case, nobody would be able to find drugs, right? Because the market would dry up, but the demand would still persist, and these prices will explode. The situation, it could due to a shortage because they're actually stopping drug trafficking. But what they are doing is taking out select individuals in select gangs. And to me, this is more indicative of them just knocking out the competition. The question is the competition for who? Who is the group or people that will step in and fill these market vacuums from the chaos being caused on the ground? Now, as I said, these trafficking in gangs organizations, they're competitors to the state, and they're an ulterior form of making money. This is another form of what you can say remittances, right? Because there's so many drugs in America, and this money is making its way back to Latin America to these cartels. So as these organizations are depleted, it's going to open up, and then chaos reigns, it's going to open up opportunities for other players in the field to step in and fill that vacuum, that are more organized and less subject to these arbitrary attacks or seemingly arbitrary attacks that the U.S. is coordinating with its Latin American allies. So that's to be played out, and we'll see where that goes with that industry. Going overseas to the Eurasia, as I was saying, there's a lot of things going on. As you know, Israel and the United States have carried out attacks on Iran. As I said, I think there's that is the shroud, or that's the mission. I don't think it's really. I think this is an opportunity for Israel and America to take out, just like with the cartels. They're targeting key individuals that they're disapproving of, but Iran, to me, really hasn't done anything serious. They sent some missiles that are a nuisance, but I'm not seeing casualty numbers where I think they should be based on the rhetoric that's in the media. I'm not seeing the Iranian army amass. If you see the protests that's breaking out, it's from the people, but it's not from the government. So you're seeing protests break out from the people and in Bahrain, but Saudi Arabia crushes that. So you have a situation where the governments aren't necessarily engaging in war, which is weird to me, right? And that's why I say this is not what it seems to be. If you were Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Iran is shooting these missiles aggressively into your country, wouldn't you bomb Iran? Wouldn't you take some defensive measures? No, it's kind of like, oh, they're just letting Iran do this because Iran has to save face. But why do they save face? Because they're not really trying to cause real damage. It's causing chaos, and given this chaos is allowing people to do things in a very advantageous or opportunistic way, such as Israel moving into southern Lebanon. But is it really doing what it said it's doing? And that's the true point. That's really the question of what's going on. So all that happened, that's at a standstill. There's still bombings, but like I said, the casualty numbers, especially Iran to Israel or Iran to the United States, it just seems more like a dance than it is acts of aggression. Even though there are serious casualties being taken on the Iranian side, as certain individuals have been heavily targeted. And the way they've been targeted, and to the degree they've been targeted, you can't say that the Iranian government isn't filled with spies, right? The level of detail that is taken to get these certain particular people at a certain time, and they're always able to do it timely and accurately, is very, very unfortunate, you can say, because they have been fully compromised in Iran, fully compromised. As I said, that Iranian government is not there for the Iranian people. So, nevertheless, there is chaos and there is some threat. Turkey's on standby. You have a situation where you have Pakistani people want to do something, but the Pakistani government, which it has a similar situation with Egypt, what they have with this Muslim Brotherhood, the population is a little bit more extreme than the government, or a lot more extreme than the government. So the government does a lot of efforts to suppress this extremity or this extreme radical nature. And they even went as far as to say, Iran, calm down, don't hurt Saudi Arabia too much, because Pakistan has a security alliance with Saudi Arabia. And I think it will be very difficult for Pakistan to really do too much damage to Iran, because you have a situation where Pakistani people, their citizens, are not going to be for that. Like, Pakistan is not going to want to go to war with Iran because they have such a strong Islamic allegiance in Pakistan. So you have a situation like that. And there has been talk with different groups, and nobody wants to go into the mountainous country of Iran. Iran is 90 million people. It's full of mountains, which basically on the ground washes out the technological advantage, right? Because it's hard to get that grand, like, just parking lot the place, like bomb everything flat. People are able to hide a lot more in the crevices and find caves and opportunity resistance there. It was too much just to move forward and advance. So it will be a quagmire beyond disproportional beliefs if anyone was to actually try to invade Iran on the ground. So I just, like, people threaten that, like the U.S. is threatening that, and other countries threatening it. It's completely almost impossible, absolutely almost impossible. It would have to be a force on the ground with inside Iran. Even President Trump even came out and said he's not a big fan of the son of Shah Pahlavi, because he's thoroughly American, but you would have to have somebody in the country, rooted in the country, in the culture, with popular support. And none of those people, from what I understand, has been identified. And even, I know people were talking about the Kurds, but the Kurds is a regional group. And America just, like, pretty much shitted on the Kurds with the whole Syrian situation. So the Kurds are kind of, I don't know, they're always, like, unfortunately, they're like the fallback person. You know, whenever America's in a tough spot, they go to the Kurds. But do they take the Kurds serious? Do they have a real genuine relationship? No, because America much prefer their relationship with Turkey, which definitely don't want the Kurds to have any state which they can use to leverage to take land from Turkey, because there are so many Kurdish citizens of Turkey. So another thing that has unveiled itself in this situation is Europe has made some drastic changes. So President Macron of France, has came out. Emmanuel Macron has came out and said, "Hey, we're about to increase our nuclear warheads, and we're not even going to tell you how much we're going to do that for," which is hyper aggressive. And they even talked about putting defensive weapon into this Cyprus. And this is one of those things. As I said, this Iran chaos is allowing a shroud for people to do some sneaky things, right? Cyprus, who's the big contention with Cyprus right now? It's Turkey and Greece. Turkey is the biggest rival to France in the Mediterranean by far. And by France putting those weapons in, or anti-air defense weapons into Cyprus, those can be used against Iran, but they could also be used against Turkey. In fact, I would imagine to say they're being set up to be used against Turkey. So there's a big contest in Cyprus between Turkey and Greece. So with France going there and doing that, they're really extending their force projecting out into that Eastern Mediterranean region. So Not only that, but now they're becoming more muscular. And this is what I'm talking about what the U.S. is giving up when they're stepping away. They're stepping away, and you got countries such as Poland saying they want the nuclear bomb or they want to be active in a nuclear pursuit. Like if Poland gets the nuclear bomb, all bets are off. Do you think Ukraine's not going to want the nuclear bomb? Do you think Turkey's not going to want the nuclear bomb? Turkey's already probably working that way. That's why they're developing such a relationship with Pakistan. So when you have this situation where because America has stepped out, a lot of countries feel vulnerable. They're going to take a lot more aggressive actions. You have a country like Canada, which has historically been one of the most benign neighbors one can ask for. They're becoming aggressive. They're starting to sound like warmongers, and they're starting to say they're not agreeing with the U.S. with this and this and this, and they really recognize, like, really represent a genuine threat, not because of themselves, but because they can be a staging ground for a China. Imagine if they have mass Chinese investment in industries right on the border of the U.S., that flat border with the United States. And I think that is a real problem that the president should be worried about. But that's a problem historically the United States haven't had to deal with. And this is where I talk about the flaws of the America's first mentality. America would be the first, but America itself is not necessarily the most empowered landmass. It's a strong country, but North America is not the strongest continent. That is left for Eurasia. Couple other things. So Spain saying they're not giving the U.S. permission to use its bases, so to potentially drop bombs in the Middle East. And that's another problem, right? Because now Donald Trump is threatening Spain, one of the most legacy members of NATO. It's not a part of the original 5 or 6, but they came on a little bit later. But they have been with NATO for a very long time. And he's saying, let's basically screw Spain. Like we don't want to trade, we don't want to do anything. Spain is pretty much the western flank of the European continent and the gateway to Africa with the Straits of Gibraltar right there. It is highly strategically important. Europeans didn't get off of Europe from a maritime perspective until the Iberian Peninsula was cleared of the Moors. So you have a situation here. It was the Portugal and Spain which led the age of discovery. Their position on the flank of Western Europe is highly strategic. So for America, being an Atlantic country, not to be friends with an Atlantic state in Europe, it's highly dangerous because do you think France is going to side with the United States or Spain? So those neighbors are going to be one and the same. And once America is off the European continent, or if it's being expelled from the European continent, that what was once a buffer, Western Europe, now becomes a spear directly pointed at the United States. So there are so many parts, and I'm not going to talk about the Trump is also angry with the UK over the Chagro Island deal that's in the Indian Ocean. It's not a lot of real estate out there. And these are all levels of contention with the U.S. Yes, they're doubling down. They're very strong, I think, in the Western Hemisphere through a lot of their drug counter attacks or attacking these terrorist groups or these narco groups in the Western Hemisphere. And they're building up a lot of strength in the Western Hemisphere, particularly as you see in Venezuela. But the situation, what they're sacrificing, though, is the mother island of the world. And the mother island of the world, I won't say the mother island, but the main island or the center of the world, the demographic heartland of the world is Eurasia. And the key to United States security historically has always been a fragmented Eurasia. So him allowing these power centers to potentially develop, which can unify large swaths of Eurasia, I think in the long term will be a threat to American global interests. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. Comment below, like, share, subscribe if you enjoy the content. Until next time, take care. Bantu up.